Good afternoon from the UK. I'm in leafy Buckinghamshire, and I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Banham, SJ Banham, in Essex. Anywhere near the sea over there?
I am
Oh,
actually
oh,
about
are
4 minutes
you?
walk away.
Oh, how
Yes.
lovely.
Yeah,
How
it can be
lovely.
lovely. Yeah.
Right. Well, we plan to move to Dorset at some point. My
Mm.
husband wants Cornwall, and I love Sussex, so somewhere in between. We haven't decided
Yeah.
yet, but at some point when he retires, funny. Anyway, lovely. Yes, so we're here to talk about you and your and everything that you do within, as much as me, if not more, within the writing fraternity, wonderful as it is. So we usually start at the beginning. We'll go off at all sorts of tangents because you have more tangents than most people. So we'll start at the beginning and how you got into writing. And can you remember? I know you do a lot more than writing, but can you remember the first thing you wrote?
Funnily enough, I was thinking about this one, and I think I got into writing because my whole family were big readers. My mum and my sister loved fiction. My dad loved non-fiction, and I was still on the very young books. So it took me a while to get into reading. Bit of a late developer my whole entire life, but that's okay. Um, but my getting into it was because I saw what they got out of it, and I wanted to make up stories as well. So that kind of progressed over, from my early teens upwards. It just progressed until my mid-teens, and then I really started getting hold of it. My first thing that I published, it's kind of a two thing here, a double thing. The first thing that I actually wrote was I was about 18 or 19, and you may remember this. Do you remember Moonlighting, the
I
TV show?
do.
You
Sybil
do,
Shepherd and
Sybil.
Bruce
Yeah,
Willis.
I was mad about Bruce Willis at the time, and I they ran the Blue Moon Detective Agency. So as it's called now, but I didn't know what it was called then, but fan fiction. So I'd written a story based on all of those characters, and it took me 18 months to write about 30,000 words. And I was working at the time and printed it all out on all of their copiers and everything, and
Mm.
borrowed their paper, which I would never give back, and their staples. And I printed it all out. It takes about 45 minutes to read it at a push.
Mm.
And I have still got it somewhere, but that was the first thing that I'd ever written at length. It was quite it would be a short novella now, but from my point of view, it was a very long thing to actually put effort in and write. So that was
Mm.
my first thing. First
Mm.
thing I ever published and got paid for was about 1999 or 2000, around there. I got
Mm.
£25 for this short story. That was, as they say, a lot of money then. It's a lot of money now, quite frankly.
Yeah. Can you
So that
remember
was the first thing.
who published that?
It was a local magazine, and this is a guy that was just starting a magazine that went to different writing groups and asked if they would submit a short story, and I did.
Mm.
And it was picked up, and I was really thrilled. And
Mm.
it was kind of a time travel story. It was about a castle in Scotland called Craigievar Castle, which is stunning. And it was a modern day story. Fog descends, suddenly you're in, several generations earlier, that kind
Mm.
of thing. But it was a fun
Mm.
story to write, and he obviously liked it. He printed it and paid me, and I remember getting the check, and it was, crikey, this was a long while ago. I got the check and knew I had to cash it because that's the whole point. But I didn't think that far ahead. I was so excited about getting the check that I framed
Mm.
it and I put it on the wall. And a while later, I thought, do you know, I've still got £25 to cash. So I had to take it off the wall and go and
Mm.
cash it. Didn't occur to, I took a photo of it, I think, but it didn't occur to me to photocopy it to get it
Oh,
that way. It didn't occur to
yeah.
me at all.
Yeah, I do. The first thing I had published was, my mum kept saying, send something off so I can tell people you're a published author. And it was a Woman's Weekly when they used to do 60 words, a page of 60-word stories. And I'd sent them a whole sheet of these 60-word stories. And they published the first one, which I called Pizza Payback, and they just called it Payback. And I thought, because it was the first one on the sheet, I thought, great. So the next one's going to be in the next issue. And then the one after that's going to be in the next issue. And, really excited. and they sent me a check as well, and it was a lovely colour check. And I was working for the company at the time that had colour photocopiers, so I took a photocopy of it and have that. So I have 2 or 3 copies of that in the file, and did actually cash it. That was £10, and it wasn't actually that long ago. I think it was 2009, and then the next month, oh, it was quarterly. It was in their fiction special quarterlies, and I went to the newsagents all full of excitement because they didn't let you know when it was published. It was sort of published, and then you got a few weeks later, you'd get the check through the post. And I went to the next edition, they'd stopped doing it. So I kind
Oh
of,
no.
rather than be the first of many, I thought I'd killed it because it was the
Oh
last time they
no.
ever did the 60 when they didn't do them anymore. And chat used to do, back in the day, chat used to do 55 words or 50
Yes.
words, I think it was. And so
Yeah.
many of them take a break. They'd still do the monthlies. But Woman, Woman's Weekly, Woman's Own, they all did short
Yeah.
stories and
Yeah.
then stopped them over the
Oh.
years. Yes. But you write longer pieces now,
Yeah,
longer than.
once I'd learned how to have the stamina to get through a novella and then a longer novella and then a novel and then a longer novel. Once I'd
Mm,
learned the stamina and pacing and all those kinds of things,
mm,
there was actually no stopping me. There was around, I would say probably around 2000, um, the situation at home was that I'd take my daughter to school and I had that time between her going to school and picking her up. She
mm,
was in the junior school, um, to do stuff at home and write. And this lasted probably about 3 or 4 years, so it's quite a substantial time. And
mm.
as it turned out, I've still got some of them are works in progress, and I absolutely intend to complete them before I drop off the planet. Um, I probably wrote about 7 or 8 novels. So I
Wow.
was absolutely focused on them. And
Mm,
yeah, got to my, well, self-publishing had just started coming in. It was very, very touch and go, and there was obviously a lot of stigma about it. But it got to 2005, and I was thinking about, shall I, shan't I? Who shall I go with? Shall I do it myself? All these, so many questions. And also, would that be the right choice? And I was actually working by this point as well. So I was employed. And a lot of people there didn't know I wrote, but some people did. But also didn't want to let on that I did, in case it was a problem for me working there.
sure.
I was a secretary. And I decided on my 40th birthday, which seems like hundreds of years ago now, that I would actually self-publish. There was 3 actually. There was a
Mm,
also another thing about me is that I don't really stay within the same genre, but there's generally a theme that is always there. So I had a young adult book, a crime fiction book, and a romantic action adventure book. And each of these novels I planned to publish at some point. So I did the actually it's there that side,
mhm.
Dicing with Danger, that one.
Okay.
um, Another one which was the teen novel called Jenna's Dad, and then and that title was eventually going to be redone. I have the title already. It's First Time in LA. And then the third novel was a crime novel called Guardian Angel, but it was 2 books in one. It was the book and its sequel in
Right.
one. From a
Mhm.
logistical point of view, it made a lot of sense to put them in just one book rather than carting 2 around the place. So it's 3 in 2 years. So they got published, and I did my very first launch at a local author evening at Waterstones.
Mm,
Um, as I say, it was back when self-publishing was just getting its feet,
mm,
just starting to take root,
mm.
things that
Because that,
weren't working left. And
yeah,
yeah.
because that was Create Space originally. I think Amazon was Create Space, or they took them over. I think it was an independent company, and then Amazon took them over. Because I remember launching things on Create Space and Smashwords at the same time back in my sort of early short story collections,
Yeah.
and then Create Space were taken over, then became Amazon KDP. And I remember because in it's still the same with KDP. They say expect for it to go live between sort of 24 and 48 hours. Sometimes it's not even that long. And I remember I haven't posted anything on Smashwords for a long time, But I remember you put something up on Smashwords and you get told what number you are in the queue, and you can physically watch it go down. And then when it's number one, you think, brilliant! My book is now live, and everyone's going to rush and buy it because you're right at the top on the homepage on
Oh,
Smashwords for about
right.
3 seconds until the next book is published. And if you do it fairly early in the morning, it's okay because America's asleep. But if you publish it early evening, late evening, when everybody's awake in America, then it chunters down really quickly and disappears
Yeah.
into the ether.
Yeah, it's interesting how being there at the beginning and then watching it develop and then take root and then become established. It is
Mm,
quite fascinating to have seen all of that, and I'm quite pleased that I was switched on all that way through watching it.
mm,
Because when you hear about it now, you think, oh, it's been going forever. And new writers now just take it as granted that it's actually going to be there ready for them. But it
mm,
took a while to take root before we got to this point.
mm. So do you have a particular favourite genre, having written in crime and young adult and romance?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I enjoy romance, but I enjoy subgenres from it. I really enjoy writing characters and watching their character develop, but watching them become friends, whether it's romantic or whether it's work colleagues or just neighbors. I really enjoy watching relationships develop. That's probably my absolute favorite part of it when you see that develop. It's wonderful. Because, like any writer, when you've created a character, as far as you're concerned, they're a real person. So seeing somebody develop is wonderful. And it's in a short space of time because however long it takes for you to develop it in your mind and then write the book. So
Right then.
it's quite intense. Yeah.
Mm. And do you write full time? Do you have a routine of you're pretty good at starting at a certain time, or just because you have a family and commitments and other projects on the go?
Well, I run
Do you?
a business called For the Love of Books, which I offer writing
Mm,
services.
mm,
But my family, as you say, my family is all grown up now. She has moved out a couple of years ago. So it's just my husband and myself, and he works from home and I work from home, but in very different industries and fortunately in very different parts of the house.
okay,
Because if he's on a
so you can
conference
be
call and I'm
quiet.
trying to focus, yeah.
Yeah,
Alternatively, it could be the other way around, but I also like to listen to classical music when I'm writing, so it helps
me
me
too.
focus.
Mm,
Um, but if I'm writing fiction, I generally do it at night, so after dinner, but before bed, so I can do it from like 10 until maybe 3 or 4 in the morning.
wow.
If I'm writing non-fiction, that's done in the daytime. And I don't
Okay.
know how this has worked, but it's become very natural for me to do that.
Mm,
If I'm writing for a client, obviously that's going to be done during the daytime, and it's more often than not non-fiction.
mm,
It could be blogging, it could be copywriting, it could be ghostwriting,
mm,
but or helping clients do maybe it's editing, something like that.
mm.
So those sorts of things are done during the day, but I don't have a special part of the day. But if it's fiction, it does generally tend to be at night time, so I can
Right.
focus at night. I can't do that with
Yeah.
fiction during the day.
That's interesting, isn't it? Different
Yeah.
parts of the brain. So
Yes.
how do you? Because I'm always fascinated. I have a friend. My editor actually is a ghostwriter. I considered it, but I like doing my own thing too much to do ghostwriting. So presumably you get a vague structure of what the book is going to be like, whether it's fiction or do you ghostwrite fiction, or is it just non-fiction?
The majority has been non-fiction, but I have
Mm.
done a couple of smaller fiction pieces,
Okay.
and we've discussed before and during each, maybe every chapter. I'll send a piece
Mm.
back, see what they think, and then we'll
Right.
take parts from that and develop it. But the
Mm.
majority have been non-fiction.
Mm. Which presumably is easier in a way because it is fact that you're
Yes.
creating, and so you do your research and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And do you generally
Yeah.
find you get? I mean, obviously, this is like me receiving either effectively a first draft from a client directly, or a really polished, already fairly polished book through a publisher. Presumably, your clients are different, so you could get maybe a half a page outline. I'd like this book on such and such, and and let you get on with it, or they have a really good idea of what they want, but they can't quite put it, form it
Yeah.
themselves.
Well, when it was the novels, the client had an idea where she wanted to go with it, but wasn't sure if that was even a genre. So we had to
Okay.
work on looking for a genre that fitted, because we didn't want to create a new genre and then hope people would find it. It was more about fitting in, but adapt, like molding the story to fit, but also keeping the story
Mm.
correct.
Mm.
So not, drifting off too much.
Yeah,
And then
writing to market, but having your own thing.
yes, because they can be very easily molded into something the story isn't. And then by which point it is something completely different, isn't it?
Mm.
But those ones have been interesting, although unfortunately neither of them were complete, and the client stopped wanting to do it, and then
Good.
turned out they didn't continue anyway. All of the non-fiction ones, they've all gone to completion.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, and they've been private ones. They've not been for public consumption. They've been for families, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're quite different things.
Mm.
Some memoirs, a biography, but a local one. So all the research I did was virtually on my doorstep,
Mm.
and the client, this was a while ago now, and the client had um absolutely about, I don't know, 20 binders, like lever arch files of photos they wanted included. We can't, because it would just be a gigantic photo album. It
Yeah.
won't be a story. So we had
And
to
therefore
be,
really expensive, because
yeah.
anything
Well,
with any pictures is really expensive to print.
yeah, and also the majority were black and white, but there
Mm.
were some color ones that they were absolutely adamant they had to be color. And I thought, well, we have to have that awkward conversation and explain that this isn't a photo album. We have to be really brutal on what we include. And if they
Mm.
did want those in a photo album, that would have to be a separate project.
Mm.
So, that wasn't what this project was about. But some of the
Mm.
local things I discovered was absolutely incredible, things that stay with me now,
Mm.
which were really lovely, like a local tree that is a huge, huge tree. I go past it virtually every day.
Mm.
Um, and this lady who was approaching 100, um, her parents, this is so sweet, this is, her parents, when they were school children, planted the sapling for the king's coronation, and I
Wow.
drive past that almost every day. It's
Wow.
incredible. There's a plaque outside as well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's such a wonderful connection. Yeah,
Wow. So are you local? Have you always been in that area? So you know the area pretty well anyway.
not this area. We've been here. I'm in near St. Osyth, which is a very ancient, historic, very rich in history.
Mm.
Known for witches potentially,
Mm.
and being on the coast. Yeah, but so this is sort of northeast Essex, and I've lived in Essex my entire life, but I've moved around a little bit.
Okay.
I've lived in Southend, near Chelmsford, so a few different places. But yeah, this is,
Mm. It's
it's
still
really
home,
difficult when
your
it
home
is, it
county.
is. But I actually, oddly enough, didn't know this part of the world existed until I was well into my 30s. So
Okay.
you don't know everywhere in your county,
No,
I don't
no.
suppose.
Well, I come from Amersham in Buckinghamshire, and I moved up to Northamptonshire with work in my mid-20s. And we were looking, my mum and I, because as soon as you say you're moving to Corby, she imagines it's somewhere near the Hadrian's Wall, because it's just known for being Scottish. And they even have their own Highland games and fried
Oh,
Mars bars and things like that. And so we were looking at the map as to see how it was 55 miles from Amersham to Northampton, and then we were looking at what was on in the area. So I sort of get to know what they could do at the weekend. And then we looked at the area around Amersham, and my mum had come from Harrow originally, but lived in Amersham and Tring for years, so not that far away. And then we discovered things that we'd never been to on our doorstep. So
yeah.
has it ever influenced your writing, your fiction writing, to think, oh, actually that would be, especially for the witches, oh, that would be a good thing to write.
Actually, yes. There's well, strangely enough, the story came first, and then I found the place that fitted. Before we moved here, we lived in a place called Southwold and Ferrers, and that's quite near water as well. It's the River Creek, and I was I haven't published this or anything, but it was a story, quite an involved story about a group of children, and I called it the Lighthouse Club. And the children were going to, obviously, they'd find a lighthouse, and adventures would come from that. Well, I live very close to a Martello Tower, and it's not dissimilar from a lighthouse. So I could have, in my mind, used that as the base, consider it as a lighthouse, but it
Mm.
isn't. And it's obviously on the beach as well. So that would have worked. But I don't know, had I not lived that close to a Martello Tower, that I'd have put the two together. And I don't even know where I got the Lighthouse Club from. It's one of those things. I have a very vivid imagination. I often wake up from very vivid dreams and think that's the front cover of a story, or that story would work. And in fact, my very first story, that one, Dicing with Danger, that was from a dream. I'd woken up, had to make it logical because dreams are not logical, and then work that out from there. So that's kind of how my mind works, and I suspect I got the Lighthouse Club from that.
And do you have a pretty good memory, or do you have to switch the light on and jot it down or dictate it into your phone before you forget it?
I actually have a lousy memory, but when it comes to dreams, something happened in my teens. I think I'd read an article or something about signposting, and you can sort of train yourself within your dream to see something in your dream and kind of take some sort of photo of it. When you come out of your dream in reality, you'll see something through the day, and that will take you back to the dream.
Right.
And I don't know how I do it, but I do it. And I think a lot of it's to do with my subconscious, and my subconscious is hugely reliant on when I write anything. I absolutely hugely, if I'm writing at night and I'm writing a novel, and then I think I can't get around this problem, I can't get around it. I go to sleep, wake up, worked it out. So my subconscious is absolutely a massive part of my toolkit.
Because some writers will stop mid-sentence. I think P.D. James was one of the writers who does that. They'll stop even if they know they can carry on. If they think, right, this is a good place to stop, and then they'll stop mid-sentence so that they can pick up easier again in the morning. Do you ever find you get writer's block? Because although Mark Billingham says it doesn't exist, we know we get to a certain point where we're not sure what's going to happen next. Do you find that if that happens to you, do you work on more than one project at a time so you can switch from one to the other?
I do all of those, actually.
Okay.
And I do agree that a lot of people don't believe it exists because you don't get electrician's block and you don't get florist's
Exactly.
block
Yeah.
and things.
He
But
quotes plumbers.
oh, right, yeah.
Yeah,
I do
plumbers.
believe that it does exist, but I believe it comes from potentially fatigue or mental health issues like depression or anxiety, where you have to allow yourself rest. I know when I get to a point where I think I just don't have the energy to think about the next sentence. And I know at that point, I think, you know what? I've forgotten to sleep. I've forgotten to eat. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I do have to be reminded to eat. So that is a thing.
Oh, if
But when it
only.
comes to sleeping, yeah, when it comes to
Yeah.
sleeping, I think, well, I can do probably another hour. Let's do another hour. Let's do another. And before you know it, the sun's coming up. You think,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I've got to sleep now. And that will obviously put the whole schedule out. But if you remind yourself, none of this can exist without your brain. If your brain is not rested,
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't
you're
help, does
stuffed,
it?
aren't you, as
Because
a
yeah,
writer?
and you end up starting to not necessarily write rubbish, but not what you plan, what you want to write.
Well, yeah, it's like that 2 in the morning thing where you think, oh my God, that's a brilliant story, or that's a brilliant
Yes.
sentence. And then at two in
Yeah.
the morning you look at it and think, what was that? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awful.
Yeah. I'm sure you've come across this, especially on the likes of Facebook, where people have said, I had a really good day yesterday. And then I wrote 12,000 words or whatever it was. And then I read it again today and it's rubbish. So I deleted it. I go, no,
Don't
because you
delete
never
anything.
know, especially if it's big chunks
Yes.
like that. Yeah,
Well, it makes me
even if
twitchy.
if it doesn't go in the story you're writing, it can certainly go in something, or never, or if it never does, it really doesn't matter. I've got loads of things that will never see light of day.
But just
Um,
don't get rid of them. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, because you never know. You absolutely never know. So
That
you
does
are,
make me very twitchy.
we're going to come on to your podcasting and radio in a moment, but I'd like to talk about editing.
Mhm.
Because obviously you're an editor as well, and presumably you have an editor who looks at your, or at least beta readers or alpha readers,
Yes.
beta readers, editors who look at your work. Do you find it, A, does it change your writing, and B, does it change your reading? Because I struggle to read novels for pleasure, because I get partway through it. I was in Germany a few years ago, friends in Germany, and I was partway through a novel a few years ago, and it was a Henning Mankell, so I can blame the translation. But I think I got to about page 17 and thought, oh no, that's terrible. So I uh, typed the sentence or the phrase out, the paragraph out verbatim on, and Facebook exploded because it was such a bad. I can't even remember what it was now. Such a bad phrase, paragraph, and I didn't read anymore. And so I read short stories, which are my favourite format anyway. So I read short stories for pleasure. So do you find being an editor, has it changed, and being a writer, has it changed your reading?
If I'm editing somebody else, I'm totally focused on their story.
Mm,
And I do have to remind myself that the things that I write in books to help other people, um, do complete their project.
mm,
Some of the tips I give them, I do have to remember those for myself. So when I'm doing that for someone else, and like recently I did a large editing project, and everything was fine, but I had to remind myself, how would I behave? How would I react if I had
mm,
this sent to me? So
mm,
the feedback and how that's delivered, I think, is really vital. It's really, really important, because you can
mm,
make or break somebody on the way you've said something. And I
mm.
absolutely don't want to break anybody. I want to
No.
help them develop and
Mm,
empower them. When it comes
mm,
to my own writing, I self edit the first time before I send it out to beta
mm.
readers, because I want it to
Okay.
be the best I think it can be before they see it. They will
Sure.
obviously pick up on things, and
Mm,
then once I've got it back from them, I'll send it to an independent editor, and I
mm.
choose a lady called Helen Baggott.
Okay, yeah, I
So,
know, I know.
oh, right,
Our paths have crossed over the years.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she's done the last few novels, and actually not my non-fiction. A couple of other people have done that, but
Mm,
my novels, absolutely.
mm,
So having someone completely separate send me what they think of it, and what, things that I've
mm.
I think Helen a couple of times noted that I'd used the word enveloped a lot,
Okay.
and I hadn't
Yeah.
even noticed until she said it, and I thought, oh
Mm,
yes, there's no
mm,
getting around it. I did it about half a
mm,
dozen times in
mm,
a short space. So yeah, I didn't see
mm.
those things, and actually the self-editing and the beta readers never noticed it either,
No.
but Helen did.
Well,
Mm.
I use a Kindle Fire for my writing and for client editing, and so I'll email. Well, in fact, I used to email. Now you just drag and drop a Word document into the Kindle, and it has text to speech, so it'll read it. And the good thing
Mm.
is that it reads it as it is, not how we think it looks on the
Yes.
screen. And so it's brilliant. And I say I'm a stickler for repetition, and it's brilliant for it because you're hearing it. And this is
Yeah.
why we always say writers should read their work aloud. But if
Yeah.
you're reading your own stuff from the screen, you're reading it as you think it is.
Hmm.
Whereas an independent, whether it's your computer reading it back to you or the Kindle
Yeah.
Fire, for it picks up all sorts of repetition, all sorts of bits and pieces that
Yeah.
you may.
That's because we get so involved in our stories, don't we?
Yeah.
We just can't see out of them, because we are
Mm,
everybody in the story.
mm,
So
yeah.
we're living it, and it makes
Yeah.
sense that
Yeah.
we'd need another person. Yeah.
Plus, I'm sure also Helen says, well, this is great, but how about? So they'll come up with suggestions. It's not just people think editors are for the picking up your typos and the correcting your
Yeah, no,
grammar
that's
and
that's
so on.
right.
But
Interestingly, the one that I've just edited, I had a brilliant testimonial back on that one. I've literally just put it on my website this morning,
mm,
um, saying that, where I hadn't criticised, I'd advised and given alternatives, and
mm,
that's exactly how
mm,
it should be.
yeah,
Who wants to hire somebody that's just going to go, hate that,
yeah,
don't like
yeah,
that?
Yeah.
That's not
Well,
helping anybody, is
no,
it?
I say I edit as a reader and a writer, as an editor, because there'll be lots of smiley faces and ticks and lols
Yes.
and I love this and all that kind of thing,
Yes. That's exactly
because
the way I
we're
do.
we're not, when we're, say you go to an event and somebody tells you how much they love the book. And I remember the first book I sold, which was my one of my, up there I get it wrong as well,
You do
up
the
there.
same as me, yeah. Yep.
And my first, I only had two out at the time, my first writer's block, and somebody had was the first book I've ever sold. It was that I'd just done a workshop at a Lowestoft library, and she said really meekly, as if I was the queen, would you sign my book? And I go, and I was just as excited. And I said, yes, I would. And it never leaves you. I'm sure when you've done live events,
Yeah.
just signing a book for somebody, even if you think they might want to sell it on eBay because they only want your signature, rather than a name, which is fine. One of my books was £120 on eBay and has probably been
Wow.
on there for years. Nothing special about it. They could still buy it on Amazon, but because it had a signature on it, I think they chanced their arm, and because nobody would pay £120, they just asked me and I'd send them a copy and for a tenner. So anyway, but it's a nice thrill thinking that one of your books might be worth £120.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's you just when somebody buys your book, downloads your book, or buys a hardback or wherever from online, you never get to see their reaction, do you?
No,
So I think
no.
it's really important that especially for writers who they're vulnerable because it's their baby and it
Yeah.
hasn't been published yet. They have no reviews for it yet. Nobody else has said how good or otherwise it is. So I think it's really important, just as much to get positive but constructive positive. Then
Absolutely. Yeah. I
do you
had
read
a,
your, sorry.
I was just gonna say I had a review I actually paid for. Um, probably about 1998 or something a long while ago now. And it wasn't a particularly nice review. And it ended up saying, um, we suggest that or we recommend that you stop writing and stop wasting everyone's time.
That's
And it
crazy.
absolutely crushed me
Mm,
for weeks, probably months. And I thought, well, what's the point? This is a professional person. Why should I carry on? I'm obviously useless at it. And that mindset was appalling for me at the
mm,
time. It took me into a very
mm,
dark space.
mm.
And yes, of course, you could argue that well, that's helped make me who I am now. But at the same time, I had to get through a lot of nastiness to get back up again.
Mm.
Absolutely, it wasn't
It could
necessary to
stop
even
people.
say any of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it could stop people completely.
yeah,
With all these interviews, we were chatting before the recording that I'd interviewed 700 and something people, authors and agents and publishers and so on my blog. And over the years, I suppose it's a fairly low number, but it's still sad. Two people have emailed me and said, could you remove my interview because I don't write anymore? And I just think that's really sad that
yeah,
that's the case. But one of I knew I was going to get that wrong, even though on my screen, there we go, my somewhere serial data. When it was traditionally published, it was a serial data shopping list, and I don't read my reviews. I catch them if I happen to catch them, but I don't read them. And that was the first. There may have been more. I'm not sure. First 1-star review, that said, I don't normally leave reviews for books, but this was so bad I felt I had to. And that I read it 11 o'clock just before I went to bed, and I thought it's hilarious. And that could have floored somebody.
yeah,
But the same book, because they obviously do NetGalley and blog tours and so on. The same book was one of the bloggers, I think it's Karen's World, was one of the bloggers' favourite book of the year. And you know how many books. And so
yeah,
chalk and cheese. It's
yeah.
somebody else's worst book ever, so they have to leave a review. But it's a
So
blogger's favourite
subjective.
of the year. Really
Yeah.
subjective. Yeah.
Well, they do say you haven't made it in the world of writing if you haven't received a 1-star review. So
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
you've made it
JK
now. That's
JK Rowling has plenty
yeah,
of hers. So yeah,
yeah.
you never know, do you? So your covers, because you've been traditionally published and published yourself, Do you have a cover designer? Do you have choice when you're traditionally published as to your
When I'm
covers?
traditionally published, so this I did what you did. That one's traditionally published.
Mm,
And I have got another one which I did in 2009, which was an in-house publication with the NHS, and I didn't have a say over that one. But that one, they gave me two choices, and this one was the one that screamed out yes. The other one just slightly felt a little old-fashioned, but this
mm,
one I thought, no, I like that a lot, so
mm,
that was great.
mm.
Um, I've written or I've published I think 6 novels and 6 non-fiction now.
Oh,
So of the majority, I've had either somebody I hired or we did the covers, and those obviously looking back wasn't the best choice. But that was again, as I said, about when self-publishing first started coming
mm,
in. You
mm,
realize what your skills were and what you
mm.
didn't,
But
what they weren't.
trends change. Yeah, trends change, they don't they? So you may find a year down the
Yeah.
line you want to change it again.
Yeah.
Mm.
So the last, not that one, but the previous, in fact, I've got them here. I don't know why I was even doing that. So I've got a pen and I'm not afraid to use it. It's the
Oh
second
yes,
edition
yeah, like that.
of that book.
Hmm.
And that plus Living and Loving in Texas
Mm.
and Dream State,
Okay.
they're all done by Jessica Bell Designs.
Hmm.
Um, and I think Jessica's relatively well known.
Mm.
So she's done those. Helen Baggett has edited those.
Mm.
And the ones before that we'd done as a family, or we'd had somebody else do them for us. So I've had quite a lot of different ways of doing it over the years. So,
Mm.
whether it be traditionally published or independently published or self-published or
Mm.
as I say, the in-house one with the NHS,
Mm.
all kinds of different ways. But I think it's really down to the book how it should be done, and
Mm.
who the audience is, what they expect,
Mm.
because they're the ones that are going to buy it, aren't they? And if they don't
Mm.
like how it looks, that's going to
Yeah.
severely
Mm.
stop some sales,
Mm.
I suspect.
But I think we're so heavily involved in the industry. We see covers all the time. You see them
Yeah.
I'm forever screenshotting on Facebook when I see covers for the genres I write.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes.
see those and get different ideas.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've done that as well.
do you find we will come on to your I must not forget to talk about your podcasting and radio,
Okay. Mhm.
but marketing, natural progression from editing covers and marketing. Do you, when you're traditionally published, you presumably you would still do a fair chunk of marketing?
Yes. Yes. The only differences I've noticed between independently publishing through my business and traditionally publishing is the reach.
Right.
And a lot of the pace of how, you've signed the contract, you're writing the book, they're edit, all these
Mm.
different parts of it,
Mm.
is the pace. They hold the pace. So that's absolutely fine, because I haven't got to think about it then. Although the traditionally published one, I did get somebody to look at that before I submitted it, because I thought, no, you know what you like when your ethic is nuts and you're absolutely diligent on everything and you want them to think the absolute best of you.
Yeah.
You pull out all the
Yeah.
stops.
Yeah.
I know that some people just submit it and go, I don't
Mm.
care, but I
Mm.
really care.
Well,
So
publishers want authors that they don't. It doesn't take a lot of work to get them to a
yes,
certain point.
yes.
Yeah.
I actually can't remember your original question now. Apologies for that. I've gone on so
Um,
many different tangents.
that's all right. We were talking about market. Well, I can't guarantee that I will always remember either. Yes, we're
Yeah.
talking about the difference between marketing, between being
Yes.
traditionally published and you said the only difference was the reach.
Yes, I think so.
Mm.
Whenever I promote creative writing, a guide to creative writing, and I tag in the publisher, they will also share that. But all of my other works, if I put them on any kind of social media at all, chances are they're people that pretty well, other authors probably, or
Mm.
people that have read it, they're the ones that will share it as well. So
Mm.
there are
Mm.
people out there who'll share it for you.
Mm.
um and also when it comes to things like, I used to be out there a lot before 2019. I
Mm.
was I used to do craft fairs and sell them there. I used to give talks. I was delivering workshops, all kinds of things. Then lockdown happened. Something happened in here, and I am only just starting to get back out there again. Fortunately, I know how to do it, so I've kind of gone back into it. It still terrifies me, but I'm doing it. This what we're doing now, this terrifies me because of the tech involved. But yeah, out of my comfort zone doing it. So yeah.
But when you're doing
I
it,
think,
you love it, though, don't you? When you're out actually speaking, do you? Because I do WIs and I get a bit wound up before I go, but when I'm there and I'm talking about it and they're not falling asleep, which is always helpful, that I love it. You know,
I think
you
I
could
do.
just
I think I'm so focused on the actual delivering what I'm there to do. I tend not to think around it, but it's afterwards when I reflect, I think either it went well, this could have been better, that was excellent, all those kinds of things. But during the time, I'm utterly focused on the thing. Yeah. I think I have to be that way or I will talk myself out of doing it.
So we're going to come down to your podcasting and radio show now. How did you get into that? Because that was just before, well, you've been doing it for a few years, haven't you? Both of those.
The radio, I finished it actually. I did it for 9 years. And as I say, it was voluntary work. I actually had two shows. I had Writer's Block, which many people will know about. And I also presented one called The Pleasures of Classical Music, or The Pleasure of Classical. And that was me dipping my toe in, trying to learn more and helping other people learn more about it. So that was quite fun. I did that for about 3 years. And then I had to stop doing it because there was more time on voluntary work than there was on the business. There's only 5 days in the week, isn't there? If you want a weekend. So I stopped that, but over the years I dipped my toe in podcasting before it became a thing. It was hugely difficult to do it, so I probably didn't go straight to it. But my sister has a podcast as well, and she was saying to me, why don't you just do that? You've got all of the material. I thought, you're right, I should just do it. So, and she gave me a few pointers about choosing a good title. So I gave a lot of thought to that. I call it the versatile writer. And I thought it does reflect on me because there's so many types of writing I do. It made sense. And I was also able to talk with some expertiveness. What's the word? I can't think of the word. That's really not a word, but we're going to make that a word. Thank you. About the different parts that I have actually done or have studied or whatever. So I was able to give some tips and some help. So yeah, I started the Versatile Writer. That was probably about 2018, 19. And I think it actually started in 2020, around about that time anyway. And I was doing one every week, and the amount of effort it took, it was just way too much. And I did that for a couple of years. And then my sister actually said to me, why don't you do seasons? And I thought she wanted to take her own advice, but still hasn't. So I think I was around about it would have been about season 6. And I thought she suggested 8 episodes in a season, 8 episodes off, another 8 episodes. And I thought, you know what, that would work. So I'm now on season 13. Well, I've just finished season 12. Season 13 starts in November. And it makes a lot more sense because I've got time to think rather than go, let's grab it all together and put it out. And it's not great. It's just, it is what it is. And then when you've actually got time to think about it, and
because I did one for a couple of years.
So that's how I go.
I did one for a couple of years and it was over 100 episodes. And it was talking about things, it was all writing related. It was Bailey's writing tips. And it was giving tips and news and interviewing authors and doing red pen episodes where somebody would send me a short story and I'd pull it apart and describe it on that, which some of them have given me, I've been able to get in contact with and given me permission to add them to the academy. But it was literally every Sunday I did once a week for over a year,
Right.
and it was so time consuming. And you think, well, you know everything, it's all in your brain. But then I was doing a script, and so putting that together and then recording it and editing it and paying for the hosting
Yes. Yeah.
also. So, and I got an audience of, I think at my best was about 62, and I just thought I've just so I paused it a few years ago. I think it was 2014 and 15, and then I still have all the stuff, and I can
Yeah.
put it out again. But I think over we don't like to mention the C word, but COVID and lockdown, I think audio and video has exploded because of
Yes,
that, because people
absolutely.
were at
Yeah.
home. They had the time
Yeah.
that they didn't have before, but also we liked it was a way of seeing. Zoom boomed over that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, you
um,
did. Yeah.
so I think people like to see. So presumably your podcast is audio only at the moment.
It is. Yeah, what I tend to do, because in the early days I would use a lot of the radio content as well, which was
Mm,
interviewing other people and promoting them.
mm,
And when it came to the podcast in the early years, I would be doing something similar, which again, it was all voluntary. So I was promoting a lot of people in a lot of my time and not getting anything back. So I had to just
mm,
put a stop on, okay, I'm not interviewing anyone else. I will just give all of the tips, thoughts, reflections that I've picked up over the years
mm,
and share those. And that's actually worked right. And then I think it was season 10 and 11 or 11 and 12.
mm.
Um, no, 10, 11. I'd gone through the whole alphabet of things relating to writing. And I
Okay, that's a
thought
good idea.
that will be easy.
Okay,
I
until you get
thought
to X,
like,
X, X, and Z.
well, C for creative writing. I thought, oh, that'll
Mm,
be easy. C will only be about 3 or 4. That'll be fine. It'll be a bite-sized episode, because sometimes episodes can be about sort of 5 minutes long, and other times they can be
oh,
half an hour. It
okay.
depends.
Oh,
So I thought that'll be easy. I'll do that. And then it turned out there was so much to include that I had to do on the next season as well, the next part of the alphabet. So
mm,
yeah. So the next few seasons are going to be things I've picked out of those 2 seasons and
mm,
developed further,
okay.
which is actually quite interesting. But they all do take time. They take a lot of time.
Yeah. So what's next when it comes to your writing?
Right.
You're
Okay.
working on
Well,
now.
I've given
More
this
than
some
more than
thought.
one, I've established.
Yes. Well, um, between picking up work from clients, which obviously takes,
Mm,
priority,
mm,
I've been working on a family project, and it's my parents' memoirs. And although obviously it won't be, available to the public, it is for the family. And I've
mm,
got a deadline of this Christmas, because it's been going on a while and
right.
I need to finish it. So my plan is to finish that, use next year to edit it,
Okay.
but also next year, I've got a, a cheeky, unusual non-fiction that I want to just do and get out. I think it will be that easy,
Interesting.
and I've said this many times, and it's never been,
Right.
but I think
Right.
it will be. And
Okay.
then after I've got that one out, I can focus on um, wrapping up a lot of the works in progress. So getting back to fiction, which I absolutely can't
Mm,
wait to do. You finish
mm,
the last fiction, you think, okay, I'll do a non-fiction now.
yeah.
And you focus on that, you think that's using a different part of my brain. It's
Mm.
really nice. And then when you finish that, you think, I just got to get back to fiction. Yeah. So my
At
brain
night,
is
at night
using,
until 10 o'clock at night
yeah,
until 3 o'clock in the morning. You have
yeah.
an understanding husband, I'm guessing.
Oh, he's known it for a a lot of years. Even when my daughter was little, it would be mummy's working. But
Right.
I'm generally quite prevalent on Twitter when I'm doing fiction and writing fiction
Mm,
at those sorts
mm,
of times, silly hours.
right.
It's quite interesting to see some of the responses when you're excited about, oh, that was a really good sentence, and
Oh,
write that
yeah,
down, and lots of
yeah,
smiley faces. And then you look at it the next day and you think,
yeah,
oh, people have responded. So yeah,
yeah. No, it's always lovely, isn't it? Getting because it can be quite solitary, being
yeah,
in your office, on your own, and with your characters keeping you company, of course,
oh,
which you
absolutely.
don't get really with non-fiction.
No, no, not
Different
really.
different entity.
No, yeah,
And
my characters are
yeah.
gorgeous.
And do you think you'll remain what we call a hybrid, traditionally published and self-published? Do you think that's your way to go still?
I think so. Yeah. The the only reason is because if you've got an idea, you've got to pitch it, you've got to follow it through. And if somebody likes it, they're going to jump on it. You're not going to say no. But yeah, I quite like the way my career hasn't gone like this through design. It's just naturally gone this way. And I took a bunch of time off to do a degree a few years ago, which I graduated in 2020. Well, technically 2022, but yeah, that's a whole other show.
Another
So
story, yes.
it is, yeah. But the degree took a lot of time, but it was for the business as well. It's for me. So it's all part of the same thing. So I think had I known at the very beginning when I was 18 and I'd written that Blue Moon Detective Agency novella, if I'd have had any idea what my career was going to look like, I would have been floored. I would not have no way on earth that would have been like that. So yeah, it's really good. Look, and obviously I'm not stopping now. I'm still continuing.
No. We
But
don't, do we?
just,
That's the great thing
absolutely
about as
not.
long as you have a pen and paper or a keyboard. And
Yeah.
do you write by hand or is it all on the keyboard?
Probably the first 1,000 words maybe is pen and pad.
Okay.
And then when it gets like it looks like it might need to be developed or edited or just want to move it from there onto the screen. Yeah, but
And is
that relationship between the pen and the paper is really important.
Yeah. And is that plotting or is that actually writing? Are you a pantser or do you plot? Obviously it's different again for your non-fiction.
Oh, the non-fiction is generally planned, but the fiction, all of them have had such different journeys into becoming. Dream State, that one, I'll get that right in the end. That was originally a very short story of 30,000 words. And then I redeveloped it after my degree. I needed some fiction to grab hold of. Looked at it, I thought that's got to be developed. And I ended up making it 105,000 and paring it back to 95. But there's two stories in one, and it was it messed with my head. I printed out loads and put it all over the floor and tried to work out what goes where. And I had to use a program in the end to work out the two stories and then interleave them because that was quite a complex one. But each story has taken a different journey. Years ago when I did Guardian Angel, that started at the end and worked its way to the beginning.
Okay.
So yeah, they all take such different routes.
Right. Good. Well, it's been brilliant chatting to you, and hopefully I'll see you at an event again. It's been a few years. Next time. Now I'm further south. I'm Buckinghamshire. We're not a million miles away geographically, so maybe I'm at a capital crime or something in London at some point.
That'd be really good. I'd like that.
Yes, and we'll be back again October, November to talk about the first book of your choice, whichever you'd like to start with. Hopefully with a live audience, a man or woman and their dog, both and their dog. So anyway, we'll see. Okay. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Sarah.
Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.